Hello, everyone. My name is Wendy Myers. Welcome to the Myers Detox Podcast. You can learn more about me and heavy metal detoxification at myersdetox.com. On this show, we talk about everything related to heavy metal detoxification and different alternative health modalities to improve your health and biohacking techniques. And today, we're going to be talking about one of my favorite things, which is bioenergetics. And we're going to be specifically talking about how information infused water or imprinted water called Infoceuticals can dramatically change your health outcomes and emotional well-being. And this really, what we're talking about today, it's really the future of healthcare. It's where healthcare should be going, because when you're working with the body's energy field and taking infoceuticals or imprinted water to change the body's energy field, you are really getting to the root cause of why you have physical health symptoms. And taking infoceuticals are one of the ways that very elegantly, easily, inexpensively can get to the root cause of your health issues and release them and get rid of them to resolve your health outcomes. And so we're going to be talking about all kinds of concepts related to that and exactly how information or correct operating instructions can be imprinted onto water, how imprinted water can help resolve one's unwanted health symptoms, how information imprinted in water creates physical change in the body and can improve your emotions dramatically. How infoceuticals can help to protect from and repair EMF damage from electromagnetic fields. And we'll talk about the last 100 years of science on water memory, like how water holds information like a computer chip, and how when you drink that water, that information gets delivered to your body and elicits a change. It's just really, really interesting conversation we're having today with Steve McCardell. Steve McCardell is a certified as a NES Health bioenergetic practitioner. He got certified in 2007, and he is among the first practitioners in the NES Health family and saw clients through his private practice in Michigan. NES Health is a bioenergetic program, and he also has an extensive professional career as a writer and teacher, and today combines all of these facets in his role as Director of Training and Education for NES Health. He's written and taught extensively on health and wellness topics, including the physics of biology, and is co-author of the book Energy for Life. Steve, thank you so much for coming on the show.
My pleasure for being here, Wendy. Thank you for having me.
So you are an expert in bioenergetics and in infoceuticals and energy. And so you are a NES Health practitioner and a teacher about energy and so bioenergetics. So this is a really interesting conversation that I've wanted to have because I'm really passionate about energy medicine and it being the future of medicine and bioenergetics. And so I want to really open people up to this conversation and about the possibility that the body, it doesn't work just physically. We have an energy field and we can manipulate or change that energy field by feeding it information. And one of the ways that we can do that is taking water that has information imprinted onto it and,
Yes.
and, and infused into it, and then feed that to our body and impart massive change and responses physically in the body. And so that's the conversation we're having today. So number one, let's talk about can information, I already answered that question, but just how is information imprinted on water, and does water have a memory? Let's start there.
Right. So let's first just real quickly start with the topic of information because information seems so vague and ethereal to people, and understandably so because it doesn't have the kind of physicality that you can grab onto and look at. And so a lot of times when people hear this idea of information actually causing a change in the body, it's hard to think that that can be a real thing. And so what I like to emphasize for people is that when you get into physics, information is at the heart of everything, and it's actually measurable in terms of um, when you get down into quantum physics, that is below the smaller than atoms, right? When you get down into the base reality of the world, which is even comes before energy. And it's really it's not that somebody has to grasp all these ideas, but just to understand that it is considered by physicists a real thing, and that that is actually what drives energy. And energy, the movement of energy, is chemistry. So when we think of our bodies and all the tests that can be done medically, for example, and the pharmaceuticals that are used on our bodies, they all work on a chemical basis. What we're looking at when we work with information is actually a control system for the energy that determines the quality of the chemistry in the body. And so it is just sort of this buildup of, you've got information that controls energies, the control system for the energy of the body that controls the body's chemistry. And normally medicine is hovering up here. And what we're saying is, let's go deeper. Let's go down into more of the root cause of what's really going on for someone. And so I just wanted to make it clear for your audience that information is a real thing, and it really is about acting as a control system for things. So that's information.
Yes, and that, I think this is such an important conversation to have, because we all know loved ones and family members, and then my client base, also people that I see in my practice, that have tried everything
Mm-hmm.
physical. They've
Yes.
tried the doctor, they've tried the medicine, they've done the testing, they've taken supplements, they've changed their diet, they're trying to do all this stuff,
Right.
exercise, all this stuff that there is known in the mainstream collective consciousness to impart change in the body to feel better. And when
Right.
you've exhausted all of those things, what do you do? What do you do if you can't take supplements anymore? What do you do if you can't eat, you can only eat 5 foods? What if you react to everything? What if you can't leave your home because you're so sensitive to EMF or chemicals or what have you? What do you do now? And so this is the answer, not just for people that are really, really sick, but also for people that are just looking for really getting to that root cause, working in the body's energy field and imparting information to it, into people's energy field, to
Yeah.
then create physical change in the body. So I just want to put in my 2 cents there. So
No, and you nailed it. So if you think about food and diet, right, we're big proponents of healthy eating and all that, as you know, right? But you can put all the fuel you want into your body, but the same as if you have a car and you put plenty of fuel in the car, if the map is, if you've got a bad map, you can drive all day long and you'll never reach your destination. Or it's like if you had all the eagerness in the world to do something for somebody, and you called them up and said, I've got energy, I'm ready to go do something for you, what do you need me to do? And there's a garbled communication between you and that other person. You're not going to understand them, and you may run out and do the wrong thing, the opposite thing, right? So communication, which is what this control system is all about, it's at the heart of everything, right? And likewise, if communication is good but we have no energy, then it's fine that we've got a map, but we have no fuel for the car. We're never going to get where we want to go either. You need both. And what we're saying is, there is another side of the coin that you have to take into consideration when you want to correct the body.
yes, and so essentially what we're getting at here is that we're going to be talking about something called Infoceuticals, which
Mm-hmm.
have their water that have information imprinted on them, like correct operating instructions. And when you take these, you can establish correct communication in the body,
Right.
reestablishing proper communication in the body. And so that's what we're really getting at here. So let's talk about like anything else you want to talk about, like how water has a memory and
Yes.
the evidence for memory in water.
Well, so it's so fascinating because scientists for probably 100 years or more have been finding this property of water where it can store information. And by storing information, what I mean is you could literally take a substance that normally creates a reaction in the body, right? So somebody would take the physical substance into the body, they would have a reaction to it. And scientists have been finding for 100 years that you could put this type of substance into water and dilute it to the point that the physical substance is no longer there. And then when the person takes the water, they still have that biological reaction. And there's been tremendous resistance for obvious reasons, because this kind of rewrites our understanding of water and of life itself. And so a lot of scientists have lost their careers over this. Even Nobel laureates have lost their careers over this information. But it keeps coming up over and over again, which is just fascinating. It's like it's impossible to suppress it forever. And now people are starting to understand that this is the case. And so it's in our society. In our society, we don't hear a lot about it, but overseas, there's like a lot of research going on in Russia and places around there where the scientists have a little bit more flexibility in this area, and they are researching it in depth. And there are books that talk about a lot of this research that's being done. And it's really exciting to learn about it. And it's really disappointing when you see that it's just not catching on, or it's being pushed back against to the degree it is, because we're finding at NES Health, when we were working with Infoceuticals, we're finding for 17 years since the company was founded that this is real and that we can have a real biological effect on people when they are simply given restorative information, or that ability to correct the communication that's going on within the body.
Yeah, and the Russians are on the forefront of bioenergetics and the
They are.
research. They're way ahead of, I just heard about so many crazy things that are going on there. And that
Yeah.
they put information into supplements, and they're just have so many different, different kinds of systems and things that they're doing. They're just really on the forefront.
It's the real challenge of special interests, when you have a power structure that involves that. Hey, we don't want that to work because that threatens our money, it threatens our power. It's understandable, but at the same time, it's disappointing. And it's great that there are areas where those same interests are not suppressing it, where that kind of work is being discovered. And luckily, we're in a world now where we can communicate country to country and learn the best of what's being done out there and start to incorporate it, even if the mainstream has not yet caught on to what's possible.
Yeah, I mean, NES Health is on the forefront of helping consumers utilize bioenergetics in a simple, understandable, remote way where they can do
Mhm.
bioenergetics in their own home. And NES Health has just created an unbelievable system to be able to, figure out what's going on in your body, and
Yep.
using infoceuticals to give information to the body to impart the physical changes and physical improvements that people are looking for. And I've been to several trainings. I just went to another training over the weekend with you
Hmm.
in Tampa, Florida, and I've been to two previous ones. And I've dealt with thousands of clients that
Right.
are doing NES Health, and talk to so many people. It's just amazing, the testimonials, the stories that people have of NES Health completely turning around their lives using Infoceuticals, using information that's imprinted into water, because water is like a computer chip. It can hold information.
Basically, right. Yes.
Yeah, and it's just amazing to me. It continues to astound me the more I learn.
Yeah. When you think about, audio tapes back when they were literally on tape, right? You would see something like that and you would think, well, that's not something you could have information on that actually makes music out of a tool, right? or CDs, the same type of thing, or the kind of information you can store on computer chips to run like so many different things. Information, when you think about it in those terms, becomes much more real, and you understand that physical substances can be imprinted with information that then has real effects in the world, right? And that's all we're saying, is that water has some capacity to do that. And that's what all the research is showing. Now, there are theories about how it's possible within water, but whether or not those prove out how it's happening, we know that it is happening. And that's the exciting part, is we know we can get those effects. And of course, as we continue to explore it and learn how is that happening, I'm sure we will enhance, again, you said the future of medicine, right? We'll continue to grow this and make developments. But exactly as you said, the testimonials you hear, as long as I've been doing this, it still excites me. It still makes me giddy when I see results of assessments relating so directly to what somebody's dealing with. And the biggest thing of all, of course, is when the rubber meets the road. Somebody actually takes a remedy, and while sometimes results are more subtle and sometimes they take a little time, other people have these dramatic results in a matter of hours, and it's incredible to watch it.
Yeah, it never doesn't cease to amaze me either. I mean, I just also just my own personal experience. Like last night, I started having a toothache. I actually had a toothache, mildly throughout the NES Health conference when I was there over the weekend, and I was using another device called the My Health. That it just gives information on energy waves, same exact concept, and it has managed my pain amazingly until I can get to the dentist. And
Yes.
so I'm just using information that's not imprinted in water, but it's imprinted on an energy wave, but it's the same concept. It's just a different vehicle for delivery. And I just am using this device on my face, and I'm not in pain. And I would be in excruciating pain right now, probably, until I can't get the dentist until Saturday. So
First
that's
thing I was
how.
going to ask, I was going to say, did you put the My Health on it? Because
Yeah.
yeah, same thing. Everybody who's in pain, just like I hear those stories endlessly, right? With somebody's feeling physical pain and they use that, and such fast results they get, right?
Yeah, it's amazing. Yeah, and so, but Infoceuticals can do similar things. So let's talk a little bit about the science and some of the pioneers in water having a memory. And there's absolute science behind this. Nobel Prize winners have won, like Luc Montagna has won a Nobel Prize based on this type of research. Let's talk about some of the other people that have proven that water has a memory and can hold information.
Sure. Well, I know I'm going to draw a blank on a lot of the names I've run across over the years, because again, it goes for 100 years of research, and I'll draw a blank on most of those. But the name that really comes to me is Jacques Benveniste, who he was a Nobel Prize winner, and he was renowned in France. He had his own large lab, and he had somebody within his lab come and express an interest in studying this sort of thing. And Benveniste at the time did not even think it was possible, but he was open-minded enough to allow this person to explore the possibility that you could dilute a substance within water, and water would retain information about the original substance to still have a biological effect. And they studied it for years. He was shocked to find that it was legitimately leading to results. And so they continued to study it for years, and they ended up getting the information published in Nature magazine, or the Nature journal. Unfortunately, Nature then wanted to come over and test what was going on, because they said, this is not even possible, given that this would make us rewrite everything. And so they went over and they had him redo his tests, and he showed them the results. And they then decided to change the protocol of the test and ran it again with something that was less sensitive. And they, lo and behold, they changed the test. They didn't get the same results. So as weird as that sounds, they then went back and they wrote to all their readers and said, yeah, this isn't real. Don't worry about it. Well, meanwhile, all these other labs were able to reproduce results that Benveniste was getting by actually running it the way he had run it. So it's really fascinating to see how resistant the community is to having something that will shake up the way they have to explain things. But shaking things up is how you move into the future. And
Yes.
it's what, and he had, you mentioned Montaigne, who was able to actually take his work to the next level. And I believe he was able to actually use electronics to stimulate the water to actually reproduce the effects of DNA in a clean vial of water. That is, he didn't need the original DNA in that water. He was able to reproduce it electronically. And that is much more along the lines of what Info-Suticals are. And this is, Montaigne was another Nobel laureate. And again, and both of these men lost their reputations within the scientific community, but good for them that they said, it doesn't matter. This is real. This is what we're finding, and at the end of the day, the truth is what matters.
Yes. And so let's talk about how NES Health took this information
Yeah.
and this 100-year history of the research on the memory of water,
Yes.
and then created their Infoceuticals.
Yes. So one of the co-founders of NES Health was Peter Fraser, and he spent decades doing, and I think matching tests is maybe another day to discuss because they're a little bit complex. But he basically had a way of determining if one thing matched another. He used a technology to determine their connections. Basically through information, right? He was determining that the information of one basically would speak with the information of another. That's a simple way to put it. And so he did this for years and years and years in order to basically map out this control system, this underlying control system that ultimately determines the chemistry of the body, how we would normally think of ourselves. He was looking at this underlying control system. And in doing so, he was able to come up basically with mathematical codes that could represent or stand for all the different organs and systems of the body. And when I say a mathematical code, what I mean is a way for it to be reflected through a computer, right? And by doing that, he then had a code that could be imprinted into water. This is done using modulated light, basically modulated by these codes and imprinting light into the water. And an interesting point of the research that's done around the memory of water is that it only works in an electromagnetic field. If you block out all electromagnetic fields, the imprinting of information cannot take place onto the water. Well, normally that's provided by the Earth. The Earth has these massive fields, but they're very low power. And when Ness imprints its Infoceuticals, it actually does it under really high power, under a 10,000 volt electrostatic charge. And the reason for that is that it produces a lot of stability. So that can, unlike something like homeopathy, where you would not ship that through an X-ray or anything like you wouldn't take it through an X-ray in an airport or anything like that. The Ness Infoceuticals are really stable. Those types of things aren't a concern because of such a high power that it's imprinted in. So within that field, we use lights, and we use various frequencies of lights in order to imprint this information. It's all based on these codes. So that what happens is when you drink the water and you just take a few drops that you can put onto your tongue, or you can put in some water and drink it, what happens is that information of a healthy liver cell, that information of a healthy kidney cell, or whatever it might be, is now in this control system. And so where there might be problems with those cells physically, there's that idea of when you strike one tuning fork, right, and it's at the key of C, and you have another tuning fork at the key of C nearby, you can bring them close to each other, and without touching, the one that is vibrating will start the other one vibrating. It's through something called resonance. And that same thing is what happens with Infoceuticals, is they're introduced into this control system, And the cells that are a little bit off get sort of brought back into resonance with the new correct signal that we introduce. And I know it's a lot to understand. I'm trying to keep the concept simple, but if you think of just that idea of resonance and saying, hey, we've brought in the correct signal, we're going to bring these back in alignment with that. That's really what's happening. And it restores the ability for the body to communicate correctly and for energy to flow correctly. And as a result, for chemistry to then respond.
Yes, and that's such a great way that you've explained it like that. And Dr. Peter Fraser, his goal in he owned an acupuncture school for 14 years.
Right.
His goal was to scientifically prove the meridians
Right.
in traditional Chinese medicine. And so he was doing all these experiments trying to measure the frequencies of all these different objects, thousands of objects, and the different frequencies, all the different organs give off in the body, and trying to figure out what the frequency of like a perfectly functioning liver and the frequency of a perfectly functioning kidney. That's a simple way to put it, but he's trying to map this out so that he can then use a computer software that was eventually developed to then measure where the blockages were in the body's meridians or on the organs or what have you. Anywhere in the body there was an energetic blockage or a block in communication information getting to that organ or body part. And that was his original goal.
Well, and the really cool thing about it was that he was able to use modern technology to confirm a lot of that ancient history of
Yes.
traditional Chinese medicine, and at the same time found some variations. So he was an expert in these meridians, and he knew what should be speaking to what according to the Chinese. And he was able to confirm a lot of that, but he was also able to update some of it, which was really exciting. Is to find that level of confirmation and yet also that side of the correction to it, right? And it was really his partnership with Harry Massey, the other co-founder of the company, who he had the background that allowed the new software to be developed that could make these tests quick, because the approach that Peter was taking was much more involved, took a lot more time, took a great deal of expertise, and frankly allowed for practitioner bias. And that's why Peter tested and retested things over years and years to really map things out. And with the software that Harry was able to help develop, the practitioner bias is taken right out of it. The time is taken out of it because it's more like taking a snapshot of everything at once. It takes just seconds to do. So it's really, it's fascinating software when you're able to get this assessment. And then it's even more fascinating when you actually end up with the remedies that have these results where you're thinking, all these years I've been looking to convention, to the standard way of fixing the body, so to speak, right? And it wasn't until I got beneath that things started happening, right? That's the story for so many people. I mean, it was Harry's story in the very beginning when they first met. The reason he came on board and partnered with Peter was because nothing from medicine and nothing from all the alternatives he had tried had been able to help him through his chronic fatigue. And it wasn't until he started taking the early remedies that they ended up developing a lot more remedies, and in ways that were inspired by Harry to sort of take it a different direction. And so as a partnership, they were able to develop the rest of the line. But those early ones that Peter had developed, within days, Harry was starting to see these massive shifts that he hadn't seen. And he said, my gosh, this is for real. This is for real. And that's when it became his lifetime commitment to bring this out to the world effectively.
Yeah, and so he met Peter Fraser, and he was able to take all this 30 years of research that he'd done and put it into a software system
Yes.
where today people can do a scan. They can they've just put their hand on a little scanner, and in a few seconds it tests 450 different data points in their body to see what has an energetic block. And usually where we have an energetic block, you may or may not have a physical breakdown in functioning, but for so
Right.
many people, it's just uncanny the high correlation between their known physical health issues and what they see in the scan. And there's no denying that
Right.
people are really shocked. They're really kind of shocked when they see their scan results. And then based on the scan, it tells us what infoceuticals that they should focus on first.
Right. What is this control system or body field, as we like to call it? What is it most needing in that moment for support? Because, a lot of times we're stuck up in this brain, right? And we're thinking um, in a more medical sense, right? Okay, well, this is wrong with me, so I need to take this thing and it will fix it. And that's the disease and cure mentality. What we're saying is, no, you may have these symptoms going on here. And yes, medically, they might describe that as this disease or that disease. We're not even thinking in those terms. What we're saying is all these symptoms could have lots of different causes. And you have reached this point through your own unique path and have built, and we all have, right? We've all been down for years and years going along this path and creating this tangle underneath everything. And it needs to be untangled in a certain order. And that's why we do like to use this scan to say, we're not worried about the symptoms so much. We're worried about what's going on underneath and how we untangle that. And as we untangle that, then the body has its own ability to resolve all of this. And that's the whole approach of bioenergetics.
And so there's 72 infoceuticals. It might be a little bit more, 75 or something.
Yeah.
But there's usually a few new ones that had come out.
Yes.
And so, and originally they made a couple thousand. They did a lot. Harry and Peter did a lot of these different experiments, and Harry's told me about a lot of them that are
Mm-hmm.
really funny.
Yeah.
But they kind of over time they had experimented on themselves to try to get whittled down to these most effective, most important infoceuticals that are for the kidney, for the liver, for the brain, for
Right.
the emotions, for what have you, for sleep, and there's lots of them. And in looking at the scan, you can which ones are that you need to take. And usually people take about five infoceuticals.
Right.
You can
Yep.
take more. But you can get too much of a good thing. You don't want to take 20. There's only so much information you can feed your body
Right.
every day. There's only so much change your body can deal
Right.
with
And to
every
that point,
day.
it's not harmful to be taking more. It's just the body's only got so many resources to make that change happen.
Exactly. And infoceuticals, and tell us how they can't harm you. They're not going to hurt you. Can you talk about any sort of the pros and cons of infoceuticals and side
Yeah.
effects?
So exactly to your point. I mean, if you're even talking herbs or something like that, we know that, like, I would not personally sell herbs to somebody without doing a lot of schooling, because herbs are medicine, right? They actually work by being slight toxins to the body, and then the body has to respond in the correct way. And with infoceuticals, it is the opposite concept. It's really providing the optimal blueprint for the body, if you will, or saying to the control system, this is how you're supposed to be working. And that idea of resonance of if it's not working the way it's supposed to be like this, but it's like this. You introduce this to it, and through resonance, try to bring it back to where it needs to be. And so it's a different approach altogether. It's saying, hey, instead of trying to go in and kill the bad things or to pressure the body into responding in the correct way, why not just go in and support it and give it what it's looking for and remind it? I think that's the best word you could give it. Remind it of what it's supposed to be doing and help it towards that. And that is the difference of approach between infoceuticals and something like herbs or homeopathy or even conventional pharmaceutical medicine, right? They are two different approaches. Now, if you were to use herbs, if that was, for example, your modality, you had already trained in herbs, the beauty is that the two can work wonderfully together. And that is one thing that we find with infoceuticals, is that if there's a practitioner, nutritionist, a chiropractor, whatever it is, who's already working in another modality, the response we get from them is almost universally, they get better and faster results when they combine it with the information that you get within Infoceuticals.
Yes, and so let's talk about how to use Infoceuticals. So how
Yep.
does someone take them, and like when do they take them? Can you give us some insight on that?
Yeah, absolutely. So they come in just a bottle, and you've even got one around there.
Yeah,
Let's
see,
see.
I've got one right
There you go.
here.
Yep.
There's
So
one
there's your
there.
energy. Energy is an awesome one.
Yeah.
Um, so yeah, they just come in a little bottle, and you're literally just putting some drops into some water and drinking the water. And it's that simple. And they imprinting information into water. It is ideal if the water is structured because that structure really holds that information. And so there is um, we use salt or mineral solution to be able to structure the water and to hold that information. So you will get sort of a slightly salty flavor within the water. And you can use more water to dilute the taste, or very little water if you don't care. Personally, I put it directly onto my tongue. I don't even put it into water. I just take out the dropper and put it directly into my mouth. I just make sure that the dropper doesn't touch my tongue, just so we don't have a bacterial contamination within the bottle, right? Just to keep things clean. But you can take it direct in the body. Now, to be fair, there are some people who respond so easily to infoceuticals. And I would say, especially children and pets that don't have all the mental blocks that we do as adults. A lot of times you can just put a few drops onto the skin and people will have a response. And why? Because this control system is not like in your gut, it's not in your lungs, it's not inside your body, it's in and penetrating your body. It's everywhere, and it does extend from the body, which is why you can put your hand on a device and have a reading given. And so there are people who put it onto the skin and actually get a response that way. I do like having somebody drink it, but it may be in the long run we learn there's no difference between the two.
Yes. Yeah, and so you're gonna do a few drops a day
Mhm.
of each infoceutical,
Yep.
and usually you're given about 5 infoceuticals.
Yep.
And what are some of your favorite infoceuticals that you've used or seen amazing results with?
Yeah, I'll tell you two jump to my mind right away. One of them, because I always tell when I'm doing training on NES Health, when I'm training practitioners, I always tell them about Bone Driver because it has such an extensive reach, bioenergetic reach within the body. So bone driver, as you can imagine, naturally has to do with the fields produced by the bones, really by the compression of the bones. It's one of the reasons that exercise is important, or just movement, right? Because we move and it compresses the bones. Every time we're moving around, it does that. And that actually helps to generate this field. So if we're not moving, we're not generating this field. That's true with all the other what we call drivers as well. But bone driver, the nice thing with that is, the bone marrow is associated there. The bone marrow produces our red blood cells. It produces our immune blood cells, right? It produces, so that alone gives it a lot of reach. And then the bone driver also is associated with calcium metabolism, which if you look up what calcium does in the body, you're talking about nerve transmission, you're talking about the beating of the heart and the circulation of the blood and just about everything. So it's, for me, because of its broad reach, I just happen to really like that one. And the other one that jumps to my mind is nerve driver. And nerve driver, so a lot of us are way up in our high frequency brain waves. And we're always active, active, active. We have a hard time sleeping because we're so active like that. And nerve driver is designed in part to help balance all the brain waves, including the deeper ones. And so a lot of people actually find that it helps them to sleep if the problem has been that they are just too up here. It helps to balance things out and may help them to sleep. But why I love Nerve Driver is because overall, when I have worked with people who have had some sort of nervous system issue, I have generally seen very fast responses. And it's what it actually excites me if I see um, that somebody's coming to me for help with that type of thing, because I feel pretty confident that they may see some results pretty quickly. And there are a lot of infoceuticals associated with the nervous system. So I would kind of include all of them in there. But nerve driver is just one that I have found, and this is just anecdotal, this is my experience, but I have found often shows up in those situations and often is part of any solution I might find for them.
I love Nerve Driver also, and that's what I've actually been using to control my nerve pain
Okay.
is taking I'm sorry, not taking the Nerve Driver infoceutical, but you can use that to
Yes.
calm the nervous system down and calm down these nerve impulses that are communicating a pain signal to the brain. But I've been
Have you been
using
using that setting as well on the My Health? Is that what?
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't have my My Health here. I should probably go grab it. But I have this My Health device. It looks kind of like a cell phone. And I would put that on the nerve setting and put it on my face right here where it's hurting. And it's just amazing. My pain just went away
Yeah.
after doing it for 20 minutes. Just mind blowing. It always surprises me. I don't know why,
Yeah.
but
Yeah.
how I can all the different things that's My Health and the NES Health program and Infoceuticals can do. But I love the nerve also because I'm very much in my head, thinking,
Hmm.
planning, doing researching, and what am I going to do next? And I get very excited about my work and bioenergetics and detoxification, and always thinking about it and how to educate people more about it. And I have a hard time going to sleep, and I have a hard time sleeping because of that, because of all this brain activity. And Ness has just helped me kind of bring that. It's not necessarily stress; some of it is stress, but just bring all that energy down so that I can calm down and be healthier as a result, and
Yes.
sleep better and stress reduction. That's really, I think, one of the biggest benefits of doing a NES Health bioenergetic program with Infoceuticals is stress reduction. With
Yes.
that's just the number one thing that I think it really helps with, that gets people better.
Well, for sure, because it is when you are more balanced with the parasympathetic system, nervous system, that you can heal. And so many of us are stuck so strongly in the sympathetic nervous system, the fight or flight kind of whatever, that we never give our bodies a chance to rest and heal. And yet it's so essential. And so, yeah, when we can balance that out a little bit and get a deeper rest, it's super important. And of course, in your line of work, where you're also supporting people for basically getting, detoxifying and cleansing the body, right? That nerve driver is just helping to charge the nervous system so it has the power to do that type of thing. Because the nervous system, of course, is it's central. Is when you get to above the communication system that we're talking about and you get into the biochemical body, that nervous system is so critical, and it is highly impacted by the toxins in our world, and we need to make sure that that is kept clean as much as possible.
Yeah, and so let's talk about what is causing these energetic blocks in the body. So so why don't you just explain what energetic blocks are on the meridians, and then how the infoceuticals work to kind of clear those energetic blocks, so to speak.
Right. So let's go back to that concept of a map, for example. Or I mean, if you're in construction season, you know it without a map. You're driving along and there's a block in the road up ahead and they say detour, go this way, right? And it takes you longer to get where you're going. It takes more gas to get where you're going because there was a block in the road. And so when we're talking about either information blocks where there's a gap in the map that you're using, and that creates, okay, well, now I'm going to take longer to figure out how to get there because part of my map was ripped up or something like that, right? So that would be more your block in the communication system. And then you've got a block in energy. If something's blocking the energy, it means that literally it's like somebody's putting the brakes on your car while you're trying to drive somewhere. You need to slam the gas down even harder to get the same distance, right? So we're trying to remove those types of impediments to the information processes working correctly, the communication processes working correctly, and the energy working efficiently, right? We're trying to combine those to address things. So that's kind of, I guess, an analogy of what we mean when we're talking about this.
Yes. And so these blocks and these just roadblocks in our meridians and our communication systems and energy flow in our body can be caused by heavy metals, by
Yeah.
chemicals,
Mm-hmm.
by emotional trauma, which is a
Yes.
huge underlying cause of physical health issues that I think so many people that aren't getting better, it's because of that. EMF, different
Yes.
frequencies acting upon your energy field, screwing it all up. That's why EMF makes us sick and causes cancer. It's just interfering in our body's ability to communicate. Is there anything else I'm missing that causes energetic?
Yeah, I would throw pathogens into the mix, bacteria, fungus, viruses. Now, when you get into those themselves are, again, that could be another day of us having an interesting conversation, because there's a lot of different thoughts on viruses, for example, what they are and the nature of them, and the body's use of viruses and things like that. It's very interesting. But pathogens in general would, when not dealt with swiftly, they become another blockade as well.
Oh, interesting. Yes. And so let's talk about how the Infoceuticals exactly uh, clear those out. It's not
Sure.
going to clear pathogens out, but the Infoceuticals will strengthen the immune system to
Right.
assist the body to deal with those. But how do the Infoceuticals help to clear these energetic blocks?
Well, so if I were to take toxins as an example, I mean, the body has, as you know, right, the body has these, its own methods of already doing that. And it's when the body becomes depleted of energy that the organs aren't functioning correctly and aren't able to then do this, right? They aren't able to cleanse themselves the way they're designed to do. So it's not that we are coming in and giving the body some superpower. We're just restoring the energy to the different organ fields and allowing those organs then to function more the way they're meant to. And then they do their natural thing, which is to clean this stuff out. Um, and of course, as you know, you then generally are going to combine that with making sure they're getting the right things to replace whatever might have been in the organs or whatever. But from our standpoint, from the infoceutical standpoint, we're just charging the organ fields up so that they can go back to their natural function of doing that. When you're talking about emotions, actually, NES Health was originally introduced without anything to deal with the emotional component as far as Infoceuticals. But several years into, about, I want to say 6 or 7 years into the company, they then released stuff that did deal more with what are the residues of emotions that we were not able to process fully, really traumatic events that somebody did not process correctly. And when that happens, we end up with what we call them energetic oscillators. They're basically these spheres that they stay within that field, and it's like you can think of a magnetic field and you bring another magnet near it and it like bounces off, right? It's like it blocks things from moving through that area. And we need to resolve that. So we have certain infoceuticals that are designed specifically to help resolve the energetic residue of different emotions that were not fully processed. So it's not that we're going in and doing talk therapy or something like that. We are simply saying the problem with that unprocessed emotion is that it resides still in your body field's memory or your control system's memory, and it's blocking everything. And all we really need to do, we don't need to make you talk about it or anything. We simply need to resolve it, and then it's gone. And we have had people just have these types of remedies who will just overnight, and of course, obviously, sometimes it takes a long time, but we have instances where just about overnight they feel this dramatic shift in how they respond to things, and it's because a lot of times we're responding in the same way over and over because of that initial imprint, and really a survival mechanism that kicked in as a result. And once that's resolved, then that survival mechanism is no longer needed, and you can sort of start to make new decisions about how you respond to things.
Yes, and one thing I love about Ness is that it's one of those things where all of us have emotional trauma, and I think a lot of people that are very, very sick may have more emotional traumas, or may have even a trauma of becoming very, very ill and fearful of that diagnosis or that illness, and they can pinpoint, oh, this is where my health started to decline. And it's not always just that infection or that car wreck or divorce or what happened. It's also that emotional trauma from that happening to them.
Yes.
And that just stays with them. And they may be conscious of it, they may not be. But when doing a scan, you can see what emotional traumas you have, what organs those traumas reside in, and take Infoceuticals to release that trauma. And I think it's such an amazingly elegant way to address emotional trauma, and amazingly effective way also, because I think for so many of my clients that have been searching for that physical solution to their physical health issue for so long, try Ness, and then the emotion stuff comes up. They take Infoceuticals to clear that, and they have this dramatic shift in their health, and it's hard to them kind of to explain it or put it into words, but it propels them finally onto the path of healing.
It is. You're exactly right, and it's neat to see the different ways that those are processed, because again, we're not going in with talk therapy, but a lot of times it is brought up then to the conscious mind to process. A lot of people actually see this happening through dreams. They'll end up having vivid dreams where they kind of realize what it's connected back to, or it reawakens them to something that they had forgotten about, and it gets processed through a dream that they remember as they wake up. Alternately, some people will just feel this surge of an emotion, and they will, there are cases where somebody will just suddenly feel angry and not know why, but it's being released. It's like finally being expressed, something that should have been expressed long ago, and has been suppressed, and that's causing all these problems. They may finally release it for a day or two, and all of a sudden it's gone. Or they may do so through tears or something that at first maybe seems like, well, I don't want to feel like that. I don't want to feel angry. But when they realize that it's just like this short period of going through it and releasing something that was causing problems for years, it's this weight off the shoulders, And I think anybody who knows, who has, especially those who rarely, if ever, cry, and then they have a good cry, they know how cleansing it feels and how much weight they feel coming off their shoulders. And that's the type of thing I'm talking about. Is I don't want to be crying, but actually in the end, that was a very healthy thing to do, right? And the problem is we hold so many things in our bodies, and it's really difficult for the body.
Yeah, and that's one of the reasons I was very attracted to NES Health, is that I felt I was at a place where I was very healthy. I didn't have any diagnoses, but I didn't feel my best. I felt like there's this other level I could take my health to. I felt like I should wake up feeling better, feeling happy. There was just something amiss. And when I started a NES Health program, I just felt like I started getting lighter and lighter and lighter, and just really resonating at my highest level, really
Yes.
performing at my highest level, feeling really good. And it's hard to kind of put into words the transformation. I mean, it can be very subtle for some people.
Yes.
It can take time for some people. NES Health is not, and for some people it is the first 30 days are like, oh my God, lightning strikes.
Yeah.
But for many people, this is not something we untangle overnight. It's like anything.
Because we're not just suppressing symptoms, right?
Yes. Yeah, you have to do this program for at least 6 to 12 months. I say, 12, 24 months. I've been doing it for 3 years, and I'm not going to be stopping anytime soon, because I just had too many benefits. And I want to keep ascending. I want to keep improving and keep getting deeper and deeper and deeper and releasing emotional trauma and just correcting other things affecting my energy field and optimum function.
Yeah. Yeah. And we know, I mean, realistically, we spend years getting, unwell. And then, the most unfair thing we can do for ourselves or to a practitioner of any sort is to say, okay, I'm going to give you 2 months to unravel this thing that's taken years to build up in me. So the most honest thing is to say, I understand this on an intellectual basis, on an intuitive basis. I understand this, but I'm going to make a commitment to working with a person and not just jump from person to person thinking, in 30 days, they should have my symptoms all gone, right? It doesn't, the body sometimes has that ability to just change overnight, but it can take time. The other nice thing I wanted to comment on this, like you're talking about this raising up. And one nice thing I love about bioenergetics is just by its nature, it forces us to think about the world differently. And that's another way that we get raised up, because when you suddenly realize that we're not just chemistry and you start realizing that there are deeper ways to view the world, it starts to make just a shift in your whole worldview, and it starts opening you up to learning about other things. And it's, to me, it's a journey. So it's not just the physical wellness journey, it is this journey you go on as a person as well. And the cool thing is that when you're working with a NES practitioner like you, Wendy, is that you're already well along on this journey. And you've learned so many things that if somebody were to come from the conventional world of just give me a drug or whatever to get me well, and they come over and they start working with someone like you, all of a sudden their world is going to shift because of all the things you know and all the things you teach them. And month after month, they're going to learn things, little tips, little tricks they can do to change their lives. And 6 months, a year from now, it's not only what the Infoceuticals has done, it's the journey the two of you have been on together that will make them think that they are living a brand new life. And that's what I think is so cool, because honestly, I know, all of us, we want to feel better physically, but at the end of the day, what excites me most is people growing and changing and transforming. And that's what I think can happen when somebody's working with somebody who does what you're doing.
Yeah, because this is why I am a huge proponent of NES Health and bioenergetics and Infoceuticals, because this has not only for me been an improvement in my physical health, my
Right.
being on a NES Health program, but also very much an emotional improvement, really connecting more with my emotions, releasing trauma, but also a spiritual journey as well,
Absolutely.
in letting go of things that no longer resonate with me, removing people from my life who drain me energetically,
Yes.
and attracting and bringing into my life and having a more of an awareness of the people that I want around me and don't want around me, and doing the work that I want to do. You come into your life's purpose, or step into it much more so, because of this increased awareness that you have, and because you have more of an awareness of your environment and how it works more so, how the body works more, how everyone emits these energy fields that you can feel. You
Mm-hmm.
can feel when there's a negative, toxic, sick person around you, and you feel kind of repulsed, and you understand more so why that is. And so for me, it's just a really profound program on so many levels.
Yeah, it's almost like we should give people fair warning, like, warning, before you come and see me, are you ready for real change to happen, not just have symptoms suppressed, right? Because in my view, you go in and you see the doctor, for example, and you're given a drug to suppress symptoms, and ultimately that's likely to drive more symptoms, and then you'll go get on another drug, and it's this, so there's no changes happening. You don't change your lifestyle, you don't change your mindset, and really you're not changing your health, that you're actually likely making it worse. And I'm a big fan of emergency medicine. I think, there's a time and a place for a drug to simply suppress something, to clot your blood, to do whatever in an emergency situation. But for me, for long-term transformation and wellness, I'm thinking in a totally different way. And, there are some people who are not really ready for that change. I've seen people who have gone through symptomatic corrections by working with me that Western medicine never would have given them. But they couldn't stick around because it was like they didn't want that change happening, because we know sometimes there are actually benefits to being sick, emotional benefits to being
Yes.
sick. And so the question is, are you looking for a real transformation of your life? And if so, this is just an outstanding way to do it.
Yes. Yeah. And that's true. Some people do get a payoff for being sick, but maybe they don't have to work, or they get more attention,
Right.
or what have you. And people have to kind of, have awareness of that, if that's the case. But yeah, so I love NES Health. I love Infoceuticals. I highly recommend it to anyone to try it and commit to it for at least 6 months. It's
Please,
just
right?
like, yeah, it's just like anything. It's not a miracle by itself. You still have to have the diet and the lifestyle, and, get out in the sun and do healthy things. But it will really help you much more so than a lot of conventional methodologies. And even functional medicine is amazing, and it's an improvement on over conventional. But even functional is not addressing the emotional trauma part that drives illness, that we know in the research. Adverse childhood events, people that have more adverse childhood events have much higher likelihood of having chronic illness. And this is well established in the research. So there's benefits to all this stuff. But with NES Health, I recommend people do at least 6 months, ideally 12 months, to allow the body to make these corrective changes, because the body can only do so much every day, every month. And for some people, those changes can come slow, and for other people, those changes can come very, very quickly. So you have to give it a chance. It's just like eating salad, for instance. There's some people out there that they go on a diet, they want to eat healthier, and they eat salads for like a month. And some people don't see a lot of change or weight loss as a result of doing that. So they're like, why bother, and just go back to their old diet. It's the same kind of concept. You're not going to have some sort of like miracle in your life from just eating a salad every day,
Yes. Well, it's this idea of a tipping point, right? Where some people might be much closer to a tipping point of change happening than others. And it's often hard to know, because it's that hidden factor. Like, how much change have I already gone through so that the next thing is going to push me over that edge? And some people, they need to reach this point, and they might see very subtle changes for months and months and months, and not feel that anything really profound is happening for them. And then they hit that point and everything shifts, right? And that's why it's always a shame when you push along just for a short time and you have no idea how close the profound change is. It's why I really encourage people, when they go onto a program like this, to pay attention to the subtle things that happen. Sometimes it's just a shift in how often they feel like they need to eat, or a shift in how they respond to somebody in their life, or just slightly better quality of sleep. There's a lot of subtle things that people will experience along the way. And if they track those, and if they work with a practitioner like you, the practitioner is likely writing down, right, these changes over time. That's usually part of a discussion in doing a scan assessment. But either way, remembering these subtle things along the way, after 6 months of a lot of little subtle things, that totals a lot of changes in your life when you add them all up. And I would just say, don't discount that, because those are the things that change ultimately change your opportunities in life, the people you meet, like all sorts of things shift when these little, it's like when if you are walking from one end of the room to another and you're off by just a tiny bit, you're going to get where you're going, no problem. But if you did that going to the moon, you would completely miss the moon, right? And you have to be very precise. And so those little changes, instead of getting to the moon, you go somewhere else entirely, right? You're not stopped at the moon. You get to keep going and going. And it's just this idea that little changes build into massive transformation in your life over time.
Yes, one step at a time, one infoceutical at a time. Yeah, because I'm definitely in my own journey on Ness. When the first 30 days, I had subtle things happening, and I started Ness before I went to training, before I really fully understood it, and I took 6 infoceuticals, and I started having really vivid dreams, and I hadn't been
Mm-hmm.
dreaming prior to that. And I attribute part of that to NES Health helping me to sleep better,
Mm-hmm.
reducing stress and sleeping better so that I was remembering my dreams. But it was also after I went to training, it was that emotional trauma that I was releasing and processing in my dreams. And then I also had an uptick in my mood.
Mm-hmm.
I felt like a little cheerier, and I felt more relaxed. I felt less stressed. But these are also things where you might think, oh, I wake up and I just feel pretty good today, and
Mm-hmm.
not attribute that to Ness,
Right.
to the infoceuticals. So I think that's what people have to be careful about is, realizing that these subtle changes when you're doing a Ness program are because of Ness.
Right. Exactly.
you
Exactly.
know, and giving credit where credit is due. So it's one of those things, and I go through periods myself too, where I'll have a couple months where I'm like, yeah, I don't really feel anything taking the
Yep.
infoceuticals and doing the My Health, but I know that I have to keep going to reach that tipping point where I have that
Right.
huge shift. And it can be, and shifts that I have been breaking up with a relationship, have been like that no longer resonated with me. I felt like
Right.
I'm just not in alignment with this person any longer. Or even business relationships, reaching a point where I can't be around this person anymore. It doesn't work for me anymore
Right. Yep.
because of where how I feel and how their energy is affecting me, and how that makes me feel, and it just getting away from people in my life that don't work for me anymore, and that was painful.
Mm-hmm.
That's not pleasant. And so, and also, it just, just that's in a nutshell, a lot of the changes that I've had. But I'm so happy now. I'm so much more happier now that I've made those changes and shifts. And even though
Right.
they were painful to do that, to let go of certain people that you love and care about, sometimes they just don't work for you any longer. And that can be the same with your job also, where you're
Mm-hmm.
just in a job, you're not happy, and you start doing Ness, and you finally have the energy or the brain clarity or the motivation or something where this doesn't resonate for me, and you make that change finally.
Yep. Absolutely. I couldn't say it better myself. That's great.
Yeah. So this is much more than improving your physical health symptoms. It's just helping to elevate you as a person emotionally, spiritually, and making profound change in your life that helps you to step into your life purpose.
And that's why I so encourage working with a practitioner like yourself, because those journeys are better done with somebody who is walking alongside you. Like a lot of times a transformational journey can feel very lonely, and it's great when you have somebody who's on a similar type of journey, who's maybe seen some of the types of things you're going to go through and can guide you through that. So but yeah, I agree, and I think that's the real power. All of us are here to make a difference in the world. And when we're held back by blocked information and even blockages in our relationships, our jobs, anything, like we need to clear all of that out, because we all have a role to play that we are best suited to play, that nobody else is best suited to play. And it's a shame to think, that a lot of people don't ever express that, but it's exciting to think that we have so many people who could still tap into it that can transform the world itself.
Yeah, because we're talking about, addressing physical health symptoms or releasing emotional trauma, but the bigger conversation is releasing people from illness so they can be who they were meant to be in the world.
Exactly.
That's the bigger conversation we're having. Because when, like Harry Massey, he was bedridden for 7 years with chronic fatigue, couldn't work, couldn't do anything, barely could get up to go eat or go to the bathroom. I mean, you can't be who you're meant to be in the world when you're dealing with symptoms like that. And even just having daily brain fog, or you can't remember anything, or you're just too tired to spend time with your kids at the end of the day. You just can't show up in the world with who you want to be or were meant to be with even just mild subclinical symptoms. So NES Health has I think it's just going to have a profound effect on the world. And that's why I'm trying to help get the word out as much as I can about it.
Yep. And I love the work you're doing. It's amazing.
Thank you. And so let's talk about homeopathy. So I think no conversation would be complete and I without talking about homeopathy and how that's different than Infoceuticals, because homeopathy is kind of like, again, trying to impart information into your body with a diluted substance. And I
Right.
kind of feel like Infoceuticals are the evolution of homeopathy. Can you give me your 2 cents about the differences between the two?
Sure. Well, that actually goes directly back to the conversation we had with like herbs and the difference between herbs and infoceuticals, where herbs are actually acting as a mild toxin and your body needs to then respond. So if the body is supposed to be like this, but it's kind of out like this, it's almost like an herb is going in and poking it and hoping it will respond and come back closer to where it was supposed to be. And it's just an analogy, a visual analogy, but you get the idea. And homeopathy is really the same concept, only instead of the original herb, it's doing so through the information of the herb, but it's still that toxic pressure and asking the body to respond. So in one sense, or in a large sense, I would say it's likely far safer than taking the herb, but it's still working on that same principle. And so again, we say that you could use the two as complementary, right? One's kind of poking the bear and getting it to respond, while the other is showing and through resonance trying to bring it back to where it is, where it's meant to be. And so there is that idea where you can use them in a complementary way. The challenge with homeopathy is that if you poke the control system and ask it to respond, and come back to here, it may not have the energy to do that, or it may not know what the correct response is. And so you're asking it to have a corrective response, and it has no energy or the knowledge of how to do that. And that's why, for me, if I'm using homeopathy, I'm using Infoceuticals with it. If I only have one to choose from, I'm choosing the Infoceuticals first for that reason. As I said, they're also, they're much more susceptible to challenges from if, you're not supposed to keep them near a microwave. You're not supposed to brush your teeth within 30 minutes of eating them. You're not supposed to use mint toothpaste at all. With homeopathy, you have these things where you have a lot of rules around what will make it effective and not effective, whereas that just doesn't apply with Infoceuticals. You can take them with food. You can take them apart from food. There's no issues with brushing teeth. So they do have a lot of differences between them, including that main principle of one is corrective and one is asking for a corrective response. And so, yes, Infoceuticals do approach it all differently, even though they're both working from the basis of field or information or this control system. They're both working on that level, but in sort of different ways.
Yeah, and I think another inherent issue or problem with homeopathy is the guesswork involved in choosing one. I think homeopaths will look at, kind of symptoms and then guess as to what homeopathic remedies will be used, and then apply them symptomatically. Like, oh, if I have a thyroid issue, well, I'll use this homeopathy, or I have this heavy metal, I'll use this homeopathy for that, homeopathic remedy for that. But that isn't how you go about addressing the body. And that's how people have been trained to think. Oh, I have this symptom, I got to take something for this symptom and get rid of
Right.
the symptom. The body doesn't work like that. There's a lot of different multiple factors affecting and causing that symptom. And these underlying things probably need to be addressed first in order to get rid of that symptom. Can you explain that concept a little bit about bioenergetics and how NES Health has revolutionized and has created this revolution in the research in how the order in which the body is supposed to heal?
Yeah, so it's funny. I was sort of smiling as you were talking because my wife literally just this morning was talking about how challenging it is for a homeopathic practitioner to choose the right remedy. Because really, if you go in and study homeopathy and how you're supposed to determine, there might be several different remedies for a set of symptoms on the surface. So then you have to dig deeper and you have to start finding out, well, is it worse when you're laying down or when you're sitting up? And in tradition, like the homeopath would sit with a client and observe a lot of things in order to find the right symptom. It's very time consuming. It requires very precise observation. And a lot of times, if you're just asking the client's got to remember, the client has to observe himself. And how often are we accurate in the way we observe things, especially about ourselves, right? So the challenge of finding that right solution, it's really difficult. And when you're dealing with this control system, yes, things are not always, as I said, we each tangle things up in a unique way because we're all walking these unique pathways in life. And if you go from a symptom standpoint, you are saying, well, I assume that underneath this symptom is this, this, and this, and they need to be done, addressed in a particular order. When in fact, two people with the same symptom can have just this different cascade of what led to that. And the body knows that. The body knows the process that was developed, and therefore the process of unwrapping it all, right? Or unraveling it all, right? It knows how to untangle that mess that we have underneath. And it can tell us, if we ask it, what needs to be addressed today. And then a month later or a few weeks later, what needs to be addressed today. And we can support it according to the body's own wisdom. The body is amazing. It's got us this far because it's amazing, because it has these amazing healing abilities. So if we listen to it, it will help us unravel all of that. And that's what we're able to do with the Ness scan or Ness assessment that we use to advise on Infoceuticals. If you're not doing that, you're just going by your own guess, then you're using your brain, this very conscious brain, instead of all the power of the subconscious that's trapped within this body field and really knows what's going on. And we barely scratch the surface when we're thinking from this brain. We just can't assess everything that is going on in these deeper levels.
Yeah, and a really good example of this is, say, people that have diabetes, which is, going to break the healthcare system in the coming years, if not it's already. But
Only if we can't help it first.
yeah, exactly. Yeah, and so people with diabetes, think, oh, the pancreas is breaking down. It's not producing enough insulin or responding properly. But it's actually the stomach. When you have an energetic block in the stomach, that then is the first warning sign that eventually could lead to diabetes. So that needs to be addressed first, or you can even prevent, to a large degree, that improper response, because it's just a response is what the body is doing when it's not producing enough insulin. But you can correct that you can see this in the scan. When you do a scan, when people are having blood sugar regulation issues, or they're not tolerating carbohydrates, but also the order in which that you need to address this. And it's not like, oh, let's take pancreas driver. Let's take something for the pancreas to fix that. It's not that simple.
No, it's not. And I mean, even from a conventional viewpoint, the liver plays a huge role in blood sugar regulation. And we always see, whenever I see liver or pancreas showing up within an assessment, I'm looking for the other one also. I'm saying, is there a connection between, are both of them showing up, right? Because it tells me a story. But you're right. When we're talking bioenergetics, we're talking about communication that happens throughout the body in ways that we don't normally think of. And yes, bioenergetically, the stomach and the pancreas are connected. And so we may have something going on with the stomach when we are thinking pancreas. And it's exactly right. And it's why I rely so strictly on using the assessment. And I never just say, oh, you're having some digestive issues. Here, take something to support your small intestine or your large intestine. Like, I don't do that. I say, what's really going on underneath all of this, and where is the body really looking for support? Because I trust that it knows how it's going to untangle that digestive issue without me assuming it's the stomach, it's this, it's that, it's the microbiome, right? The body field knows where it needs support.
Yes, yes. So just follow the scan, do the scan, take the Infoceuticals recommended by the scan. Sometimes the practitioner will reassess what the software says or recommends based on the client's needs. But it's just really such an amazing program. I just really encourage people to try Infoceuticals, try a NES Health scan. And so with a NES Health scan, when you do this scan, you're recommended 5 Infoceuticals, and most of those are only available if you're working with a practitioner. So you can't just go buy
Right.
these on their own. But there are some Infoceuticals, what we call feel-good Infoceuticals, that you
Mhm.
can try on your own without employing, consulting with a practitioner or doing a scan. Can you talk a little about those?
Sure. Well, you still would purchase them through a practitioner, for example, like yourself, right? And yeah, these are the ones that we have generally found have a more positive, uplifting experience. They're not necessarily likely to cause, a strong detoxification or something like that. That might be better overseen with a coach, right? So these generally have more uplifting or positive immediate benefits and energy, which you showed a moment ago. That was one example of a feel good infoceutical for somebody's feeling low energy. That's one that they could try out. We have one called sleep. Um, and even nerve driver that we spoke about earlier is one of the feel goods because it just tends to have that that balancing effect on the brain waves. It can calm the nervous system, and I've seen tremendous, like I said, tremendous positive experience by people who have different types of sort of nervous system issues. And
And
so
that one's called Chill, correct?
so no, I'm specifically speaking of nerve
A
driver.
nerve
In
driver.
this
Okay.
case, that nerve driver, what you and I spoke about earlier, that is among the feel goods. Another feel good is the heart driver, which is really, really connected to a lot of positive emotions. The heart field in general is connected to positive emotions, and it's really perhaps the most uplifting emotionally of the infoceuticals.
Yes, yeah, and I like Liberator also. That's a great one to help to release trauma and on a mild level. I really like Liberator. I use it a lot in my health also because
Yeah,
that's
I agree.
settings.
Liberator is actually not a feel good, so it's not one they'll be able to just go to a practitioner and just buy it. It is one that's more based on the scan, but I agree, it's sort of a ride. I love using Liberator. It's the
Yeah.
one that a lot of times I will use Liberator at night before I go to sleep, specifically to trigger sort of those deep dreams. And yes, sometimes you can definitely see that they're emotional processing dreams, but other times I've really had some ideas come to me, like business ideas and things like that. So it's a really cool one because it's one of the few that people connect strongly to having these types of dreams. Now, the one that you mentioned a moment ago, chill is considered something that's in the feel good range, and it's another one that a lot of people find helps to bring things to the surface, and they'll get those types of dreams out of chill as well. And chill, because it is really about helping to calm one down, especially from incessant thinking, and especially when that thinking is worry, anxiety, right? And they can't stop their thoughts, and they can't fall asleep because they can't stop their thoughts. That's where we tend to recommend chill as something that may be able to help them.
Yeah, chill comes up in my skin quite a bit. Because I'm just
It's a
trying
great
just
one.
to calm my brain down. Yeah, and so what about CFI, cold flu immunity? Can you talk about that one?
Yes, I like to call it cold flu and immunity support, even though you named it correctly. But just to distinguish for people, we're not saying it is a cure for the cold or anything like that. What it really does when we're talking about this belongs to a group of infoceuticals called the energetic terrains. And each terrain is really associated with certain tissues within the body and supporting those tissues. And so when we're talking about CFI, we're talking about mainly sort of your nose, ear, nose, and throat, down into the lungs, these tissues that are associated very often with colds and flus. And a lot of people will keep that on hand just as a home remedy. They won't open the bottle until they need it. They just keep it around. And then if they feel something coming on, they will take the drops. And I would recommend taking them for several days to make sure you're really supporting those tissues as well as you can to either not end up coming down with something or to help to shorten the duration. I do know people who take it this way, who will just keep it and wait for their first sign of something, and they'll take it and they swear by it. And it's kind of a fun one to see people so committed to just using that and 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 seeing the results that they see.
Let's talk about EMF. EMF protection is a huge issue. I think EMF exposure and the rollout of 5G is going to dramatically impact people's health negatively because it impacts our communication system. So, how does the EMF Infoceuticals and the NES Health program in general help to repair the damage that EMF does to the body?
Right. So, I mean, we can just intuitively understand some people are more sensitive to EMF than others. And why is that? And so, from our perspective, from the bioenergetic perspective, it's because some people's control systems or body fields are able to adjust and respond more. I don't want to say more proactively. They're just able to respond better and deal with it, just like some people can eat certain foods and respond to those foods better than other people. So each of us has these different levels of sensitivity, but when the body field is strong, it's able to adjust and react to these fields better. And so we're not saying that 5G or any other sort of non-native electromagnetic fields are ever going to be a healthy thing for you. But what we're saying is that we have ways to support the body field to have a better response to it. And there's actually several infoceuticals within the scan that would relate to supporting the body field in this way, because we can look at certain things in the scan that are actually damaged or harmed within the body field, especially. So, in other words, certain aspects of the body field are more compromised by electromagnetic fields than others, and some of those are very important parts of the body field, and can, as you talked about earlier, can really cause a major breakdown of communication if it's not addressed. And so EMF, the feel good infoceutical we have called EMF, that's something anybody can buy anytime as something to take just on a regular basis. And maybe especially if they are dealing with, if they are exposed on a regular basis to EMFs, or they're going traveling and they're going through, x-ray machines and things like that. Polarity is another feel good that we especially recommend people take if they are going on airplane flights, for example. But there are others that are within the scan that also support that body field and say, here, this damage has been done to this aspect of the field that we know is related to this type of non-native electromagnetic field, and we then use the infoceutical in order to focus on correcting that aspect of the field.
And so you talk about how the body is responding inappropriately. Like we have these stressors and the body is trying to figure out how to respond to that. And one reason people have symptoms and are sick is because their body responds inappropriately. And many times that's because people's bodies don't have the energy to
Hmm.
respond appropriately to stressors.
Right.
And that's one thing that Ness Health does and Infoceuticals do is not only feed corrective information, but feed energy to the body, different types of energy. So the body then has that energy to make shifts, make changes, and to respond appropriately. And so let's talk a little about that. So there's a book called Energy for Life
Hmm.
where people can get more information about infoceuticals, about how bioenergetics help to increase energy, and really interesting concepts that I think everybody should be that's interested in health or improving their health should read and learn more about. Can you tell us about that book?
Yeah. So the book it's pretty exciting because it has a real simple theme, and then it's broken down into a lot more detail. But the overall simple theme is that you need to charge what we call the body battery, and the body literally acts as a body. And when you understand the way that water structures within the body, and the way that we breathe in oxygen that is used to power us, and it's just fascinating to learn more and more. And I'm hearing other people talk about it as a battery more and more as well. It functions really as a battery, and we know we are electric. We know that this electricity runs through the body, and we need to support that. So we need to support the body battery. And then, as we've talked about here, you need to make sure that that energy is used correctly. And that's where the control system comes into play. And the book is all about how to go about charging that body battery, and then through the Ness system, uh, how to go about making sure that that control system is optimized. And it really takes a look, it really explains a lot more about how the Ness platform works, from the My Health that you've been talking about to the Infoceuticals. It does talk about some of the water science that we've been discussing. It talks about the nature of the assessment itself, the scan that you would do. So it really covers all of this. It even covers where bioenergetics is going in the future, because we're we're still in the beginning. I mean, we have this incredible platform already, and this is just the beginning. We will continue moving it forward and finding new ways to assess and correct this control system so that people can, as the title suggests, recover their energy for life. And this goes back to that point you made earlier. It's, when people are not well, their focus is on their symptoms, right? They can be surrounded by their loved ones who they would love to spend time with and do fun things with, but they're focused on their symptoms. And that is the sorriest thing of all, right? So we want you to be able to restore that energy for life and restore that ability to focus on your loved ones and the things that you want to get out of life. It's the whole, when Harry was bedridden, as you talked about, his whole goal was to make a system, was to develop a system that people who couldn't get out of bed, who couldn't even go to see a doctor or a wellness practitioner, could from their homes be able to work with someone and have a solution, then in this case kind of like sent to their home, right? And be able to take it and start to restore that energy for life and be able to get out of bed. His whole idea of a home wellness system, even though with the Ness system you can go see a practitioner like you face to face, you can also work remotely with a practitioner, and that is really fulfilling that goal that Harry had all those years ago.
Yes. And so everyone, I have the book right here. I got a copy this weekend from when I went to the NES Health conference and just learning about all the exciting things that NES Health is doing and what's coming down the pipeline. So this is the book. You can get a free copy of this book. So I encourage you to just email us at support at myersdetox.com to get your free copy and check it out. You can get it digitally or sent this hard copy to you like that. So again, just email support at myersdetox.com to get your free copy.
Awesome.
Yeah, well, Steve, thank
Let
you.
them know.
Yes, well, Steve, thank you so much for coming on the show and just imparting your vast wisdom of being a NES practitioner and working in the bioenergetic field for the last 10 years. You're such a wealth of knowledge, and I really enjoyed listening to you this weekend at the conference and just teaching me even more about it, and just listening to other people's stories and just the stories of change. I mean, it's just phenomenal. It's so exciting. It's just such an NES Health and bioenergetics is just such an elegant way, an easy way to address your health issues. And it's really relatively so inexpensive compared to a lot of other modalities out there, and just such an easy way to address your health. So thanks for coming on the show. Are there any words of wisdom or anything else we've left out of the conversation that you have?
Well, I would just say, I mean, I think it's my passion and my pleasure to be here because I do see this as the future, and I want to move. I want, like you, right, and like all the Ness community, I want humanity moving into the future, right? And it's what I'm really excited to be part of. And as you say, it's everybody. Like, you bring all this unique stuff to what you offer your clients, and every practitioner offers something unique. And when we all come together, the stories we hear and the things we learn collectively are amazing. And that's the one thing that I would just leave us with, is remembering it's by coming together and working together that we get the most out of everything. And it's why I encourage someone to go see a Wendy, to see a practitioner who, again, has that journey, part of that journey behind them, can be a coach, can work with you and really transform one individual life. But then as we're all doing this together, we're all bringing our unique perspectives, our unique talents, and we just we lift it for everybody. And that includes the clients. Every client brings something unique to the practitioner as well, and we all benefit together as we do this.
Yeah, so if we piqued your interest during the show, you guys can start your own NES Health program. Go to myersdetox.com and click on the programs tab, and you can see NES Health. And then you can also do NES Health for pets as well. We have a veterinarian on board that can work with your horse or your doggy or your kitty, or it's not just for humans. And you can do it with your whole family and your children as well. I use NES Health on my dogs, and it was great. To help make them happier and extend their life and have a better quality of life as well. So go check that out, myersdetox.com. And again, get your free copy of this amazing book. And it's not too long. It's just very digestible, even in one day or a few hours. Go to email support at myersdetox.com. So Steve, thanks so much for coming on the show. And listeners, I will talk to you guys next week. We have another exciting show next week. I forget exactly what it is, but we have so many amazing things lined up for you guys. We have Dr. Anna Kabeka coming on the show, talking about hormones and libido and what kind of things impact your hormones. That was an amazing podcast. So lots of really cool shows coming down the pipeline to continue your education about the underlying root causes of your health issues. So thanks for tuning in, and I will talk to you next week.